Welcome to Unshaken, the podcast where unwavering faith meets real life. I'm Kristy, and together with my husband, Tony, we dive into authentic conversations, offering biblical insights and sharing stories that inspire resilience, especially for families navigating the unique challenges of disabilities. Join us each week as we explore faith, family, and the journeys that keep us grounded in Christ. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's stand firm together. Hi, friends. Welcome back to Unshaken. Today, Tony and I would like to talk about caregiver support. We want to talk about preventing or alleviating caregiver burnout in marriage, where one partner has a disability and the other is in a support role for that person. I think the first piece, the most pressing piece, is to find the pain points. Where do things feel rough? I know in my own experience, and Tony, you can confirm or deny, the things that at face value seem like they would be the pain points are not always those pain points.
Very true. That's very true.
I know, different example, but when my kids were growing up, I would do anything for them. I would step in front of a train for them, but I did not want to cut up their meat on the plate. Like, it just, there's things in life in any situation, I guess. So for us, identifying those pain points, it starts with communication. I think that's a theme that probably will come up over and over as we discuss this issue, because communicating is how you prevent just resentment and bad feelings on both sides, on either side or both sides. I think that maybe the place to start in trying to figure out those pain points is really how much support does the caregiver perceive that she or he is providing? Is this a situation where it's all of the physical care happens in a facilitated way, or is it just occasional? I know Tony and I have been asked to speak about this before or share our experience, and I kind of felt a little bit like an imposter in moments because it's really not a huge issue with us. Tony's, I guess I would say we both have disabilities. Tony's is visible and probably a little more prohibitive, I think, than, some of the other stuff. But until we were married, it just was a non-issue. At some point you don't even realize that Tony walks with a crutch. It's just how he gets around. It's only when you get a closer look and kind of, see some of those inner workings that you realize there's more than meets the eye going on there.
And that's part of one of my goals in this is to, when I walk out my front door, my goal is to, kind of minimize my physical disability for the outside world as much as possible, so that all of the interactions that I have with everyone it's more about me as a person versus the guy that's walking around with a crutch. I don't want to be defined by my disability. The disability is certainly a part of me, but it's not what defines me. It's not my identity. I am Tony with cerebral palsy. It's not cerebral palsy is Tony. So, I work very hard in the mornings, especially, to make sure that when I walk out my front door, that I'm able to greet the world and interact with the world in as best shape as possible. But in that space between, let's say, the bedroom and the front door, there's a lot that goes into that, so that I am ready to meet the world and interact with the world and do the things that I need to do on a daily basis.
I think there's so much there to unpack, whether it's So there's the whole like getting up, getting shower, getting dressed, like there's that whole piece. But even some of the silly things. So if Tony's going to work upstairs, there's at our church, there's some volunteering that happens. And if he's going to work upstairs, he takes with him water for the day, snacks, lunch, whatever for the day, because it's going to be problematic for him to keep going up and down the stairs, but he doesn't want to ask anybody else to do it either. So if Tony forgets to do that, if he forgets water, forgets whatever, he's got to ask somebody else to make multiple trips, up and down. And that doesn't feel good. Although there are people surrounding us they would just be thrilled to help. They would be so happy if we just would ask for any little thing like that. They'd be so pleased to do it. But who wants to ask? Who wants to ask for that kind of stuff? So really, it is a thoughtful process. It's beyond just making sure that your physical needs are met. It's planning for the day and thinking about when you leave in an Uber or, whatever the case may be, a friend is picking you up or whatever, when I'm not around to drive, how are you going to get home? And so where will you work? Are you going to stay at the church? Are you going to stay at the office and just work there for the afternoon because there's a meeting that evening and you don't want to, have somebody bring you home to turn around and take you back again, like things like that. It makes for some long days for you.
Right. And all of that has to be thought out and sort of planned for, because, most people take that for granted. Like when it's lunchtime, you hop in your car and, you go through the drive-through or, you meet a friend for lunch and, you guys have lunch and you have that lunch hour. So, you have lunch and then you hop in your car again and you go back to the office or whatever it is. But for me, that's not such a simple process. And it goes beyond just the fact that I don't drive. There's the time factor of waiting for the Uber, having the lunch and then waiting for the Uber again to go back. So there's a financial cost to that. There's a time cost to that. There's, because those things are, unpredictable. You don't know how long it's going to take for an Uber to get to you. So if you go long on lunch, but you only got an hour, what happens? And so, you can't just say, oh, well, I'm late coming back from lunch because my Uber was late. Well, that doesn't work for everyone. So, those things definitely have to be planned for. And there are many days where I know that I'm going to be gone 10, 12, maybe more hours from home, because I know that there are multiple things going on, and it's just easier for me to plan for that long day where I do bring multiple water bottles and Uncrustables or whatever it is to be able to like eat in those downtimes so that I can stay for those 10, 12-hour days, whatever it is, and just make that process just easier.
And bring your laptop and make sure you have the clothes that you're going to need for that evening, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that it's probably a thing, one person or the other in any marriage where there's disability is going to be making those accommodations, getting that, making sure that everything is set up. And everybody's situation is different, right? Everybody's not going to stay out and have a 12-hour workday because of a transportation. But in the absence of that, there's going to be some other situation. Do we have all of this stuff for my partner's oxygen that they need to, to be okay? Do we have the inhaler? Do we have, whatever it is, the EpiPen? Do we have all of those things? Or, is this broken? Is this clean? Is this, all of those questions have to be answered. And so I think that identifying those pain points and maybe finding a workaround for that is, I think that's instrumental. But I also think that in a situation like ours, for me, I didn't know. I had no idea the struggle that you faced before we had, a closer relationship. When we were friends, I was just like, whatever, dude shows up. Like, it's no big deal.
Right.
And, it comes with that familiarity that you're going to have in a marriage relationship where those things happen. And I wish that even now, even years into this thing, I wish I knew more how to help with that kind of stuff. I try to make sure this is clean, or you want this shirt for this day or whatever, but that's just wife stuff. That's not caregiver stuff. I know that there's an extra load on you, and a lot of times I feel like there's not a whole lot that I can do to support you.
Well, and part of this too is like, it's thinking through all the logistics that so many people take for granted. I mean, you mentioned things like oxygen and things like that, but some of the things that come to mind for me are like power source, because maybe there's a wheelchair that's involved, that, there's a power wheelchair that's involved, or in thinking about like an oxygen machine, you need a power source in order to operate that oxygen machine, and even more basic than that, like, is the building or the area or the space that you're going to be going to, is it accessible?
Right.
Because there are a lot of buildings that have been around for a long time that if they were built before the ADA and before all of those accessibility laws and regulations and building codes were established, all of those older buildings were grandfathered to where they got exceptions and they didn't have to meet the newer codes because it would have been prohibitively more expensive to like retrofit an elevator or something like that. So thinking through those things.
Well, yeah. And if it's not going to work out, you have to know, like, what's your plan? How are you going to get in? How are you, a 120-pound woman, going to get your 190-pound husband in his manual wheelchair into this building? Like, you've got to figure those things out and make it happen. You've got to be able to execute the plan that you put together. So I think when I look at disability and I look at pain points and how all that kind of stuff plays out, the thing that comes up is sort of like, is burdenship a word? Like, how heavy is that? Is it a burden? Does it feel like, just a way that I can support my partner? Does it feel like I'm being crushed under the weight of this responsibility that potentially this other person's life is depending on me getting these things done? And what if I mess up? What if I'm tired? What if I do this hour after hour, day after day for years, and I'm just feeling crushed under the weight of this responsibility? And maybe my partner that used to be super fun is not so super fun. Maybe there's, maybe the disability interferes. Maybe you've got a mental health situation. Somebody is angry, bitter. That happens when, especially with the onset of a disability later in life, or, just kind of as life stages change and you kind of see things that you're missing. So I think it's important to look at, like, are these responsibilities a burden? Are they always a burden? Sometimes, seldom. It's like one of those questionnaires, right?
Right. And I think you hit something on the head too. It's because there's a very big difference between a disability that someone was born with, and so like when you get into a relationship, with this person, they were already disabled when you got into that relationship. So even if you don't know the full impact, you still have, at least somewhat of an idea that, okay, they are disabled. Like there's something going on. And so
it's not a smack in the mouth surprise.
Right. And so that there's, that they're disabled versus, you guys maybe were very active. Maybe like, you both were hikers, or, you both were very athletic, or, so you're both runners. Maybe you met at a marathon or something like that. And then something happens, whether it be an accident or a sickness or whatever that causes one of you to now be disabled. That's a very different situation at that point. Because that's not, I know that we say, for better, for worse, it's a great vow, but it's also not what you expected. And so it's a very different situation when that happens. And also there's a burden of what happens if you're the caregiver. What happens if you get sick over a long period of time and you are doing a lot of the caregiving because your spouse needs a lot of support, And so what happens if you get sick with the flu and like you're sick in bed for 2, 3, 4 days? Like what happens in that situation?
Right. And I think there's a lot of times there's medical intervention. I think it depends too. Is this a disability? Is this a diagnosis? Is this a terminal illness that came out of nowhere? Is this, a long debilitating process? Is this, Lou Gehrig's or an MS where you're going to have a decline over time, and both partners really kind of have to experience that together and make peace with it as they go, and communicate, negotiate, like all of that stuff has to happen. It's a lot. It can be a lot.
And it speaks to the emotional side of it, because there's an acceptance that has to happen on both sides. So let's break this into 2 parts. So if this is a disability where the person was born with the disability, hopefully by the time they get to a point where they're getting married, hopefully they've accepted the disability and accepted like it's part of their life, and they've made adjustments, they've adapted to things, and so they know what they need, and like we've said probably 100 times between all the episodes that we've done, like they can communicate, hey, this is what I need you to do in this situation, that situation. And Kristy, you know that we've had many of those conversations where we've talked through, in this situation, I need you to do this. In this situation, I need you to do this. But then also, if it is a situation where someone becomes disabled after the fact, so after, the marriage or whatever, now it's a process where you both have to go through that. I think it's healthy to go through a grieving process, because you've now lost the life that you once had. You're still living, and there's still a lot of life, and there's still, I want to be so clear that God still has a purpose for your life that hasn't changed, that hasn't gone away because a disability has happened. So I want to be very, very clear with that. But the life that you had is not going to be the same, and it is okay, and I think it's healthy to go through a grieving process to where you can know and realize and understand, okay, this is going to look different going forward. And if you don't have that, there can be resentment that comes up over and over and over again because that acceptance hasn't happened.
I think everything you said is good, but I also would add that this can happen even in a situation where the disability existed before. Because I think when our life circumstances change, sometimes situations come up that we didn't necessarily consider, or that we thought we knew how we would feel, but then we don't. Maybe you've got an illness or a disability that's going to prevent kids, and you thought you were fine with that until now you're married, and this brings an issue that you didn't realize you were going to have to grieve it. You didn't know that it would matter. And I think there's any number of ways that could come up in situations and whatever. But I think sometimes there's processing to do, grieving processing to do, really no matter when and how you come to the issue.
Yeah, there's definitely, and I love what you brought up with, especially with having kids, because sometimes you can start in a place where you're okay with, maybe not having kids, but then like when you start seeing your friends having kids, and you start seeing your friends go through all of those different seasons, all those different, life stages, it can change. Kristy, you and I both know people that, for the longest time said, "Oh yeah, I don't want kids. I don't want kids." And then all of a sudden, I actually do want kids. And, so it can change. And if that's not a possibility, then like, I fully agree with you. There's got to be that grieving process, and maybe it's a conversation about, is there an alternate way to still get this done?
Yeah.
And so like, again, it's that communication piece of how do we talk through that and potentially talk through something that could be, very emotionally like hurtful, because there might not be a way to get that done, so then like, and you may not be in a place or in a position to say adopt or any, anything like that. So, I mean, it can be very emotional that way.
And that can be on either side of the relationship. Because if you married young, whatever the case is, you married, whatever, you don't have kids, either party could be, surprised and have a struggle with that. But not even just that, right? It could be maybe the person who gets the diagnosis, gets the disability, whatever the situation, can make peace. But the other person, they had a life plan too. They thought that things were going to go this way. They had these goals. They had these hopes and dreams, and that's diverted. Like, that's now very different. And it's that piece of it is the same loss on either side. And so I think, I just think it's really important to make sure that both parties are going to be okay with that, and to talk about it and to keep talking about it, even when you're sick of talking about it. Keep talking, because there's more.
Yeah, there's always going to be more layers to it, and sometimes when you think that you've dealt with something and you think that both of you are okay, there could be something that triggers that emotion all over again, and you don't even realize it until it just smacks you in the mouth, and then it's like, oh, that still hurts. So it's I know that like Kristy said, we've been honored to to speak with various couples, and there's one couple that always comes to mind, and I think of this couple all the time, and Kristy, I'm sure you do too, but where the husband had the disability, and he was just having a hard time accepting it, and just doing everything that he could to sort of hide it. But even in that process, there are still things that have to happen where you have no choice but to get help or ask for help or whatever the case may be. And if you've not gone through the process of accepting help, and trust me when I say, I need to back up for a second, because I hate asking for help. Kristy knows I'm stubborn. I am as stubborn as the day is long, and I hate asking for help. But at the same time, I'm also realistic with the things that I know that I can't do for whatever reason, or that it would be dangerous for me to do. It's not that I can't necessarily do it, but it would be dangerous for me to do them. And in those situations, the right thing to do is to ask for help and to get help. And I've made peace with that. I've accepted that, and I'm okay with that. But if you haven't gotten to that place, then like that has to be step one, because if not, when the people that love you are trying to help you in those dangerous situations because they love you so much and they don't want to see you hurt or worse, like it then puts both of you in a dangerous situation potentially. So, I think if you're struggling with that acceptance, if you're the one with the disability or the diagnosis, if you're struggling with that acceptance, like that has to be number one. And whether that means, talking with a pastor, talking with a therapist, whatever the case may be, like that has to be step one, because we've got to get to a place where we understand that asking for help is not weakness.
Accurate. And I think, so sometimes it's not the disability itself that can bring discord in a marriage like that. It's the emotional piece, right? It's one person doesn't mind helping the other, would love to support the other. It's fighting with the stubbornness. And then there comes if you would have just let me help you, it wouldn't have been so hard. We wouldn't be, it just can really breed bad feelings, resentment, bickering, like all those things that are just not healthy.
And it snowballs. And then you've got to, we talked about it before where like, and when you have a splinter, if you pull it out right away, it doesn't really hurt all that much. But if you let it sit in there and fester, then you have a real problem. And, so like you want to stop that cycle as quickly as you can so that it doesn't turn into a big blow up fight when it really wasn't that big of a deal to begin with. All Kristy wanted to do was carry my Bible into church, and I was stubborn and didn't want her to carry my Bible, and now I fell on the ground, and because I didn't have my hands free, I really hurt myself. So there's so many things, and that has not come up. I'm making that up because
no, it wasn't a Bible.
Yeah. But no, it's just one of those things where like, if I'm stubborn, then I've made things 10 times harder than what it should have been, and many times 10 times longer than what it should have been had I just let Kristy help me. And so, it's one of those things where but because I didn't accept it, that breeded the problem, and then it just got worse because I was stupid, and that's not where you want to be.
And I think that sort of, you might say stubbornness, but that sort of unwillingness to ask for help or to get support, sometimes it really does just come from, this just is a terrible situation and it's really unfair, and I'm having a hard time making peace with that. So I think it just can be just a symptom of a kind of a deeper problem. So what can we do? So we've got a caregiver, we've got a person with a disability or an illness. How do we lighten the load? So I think in our travels, we probably have come closer with people with disabilities than maybe a lot of, just because of the circles that we travel in. And we've seen situations like ours where, I feel like Tony's disability really impacts me very minimally. I don't I don't feel particularly like a caregiver. There are some things that I do to support him, and there are some things that he does to support me. And maybe they're not the typical things that husbands or wives would do, but it's just not a big deal. It's not a burden. It's just how we live. It's just what we do. And I think a lot of that comes because we've talked about it so much, and we've really negotiated, under these circumstances, this is when I need you to help me, or in this situation. But sometimes there isn't a situation where one person doesn't have to support the other. And it might be some silly, small thing that doesn't feel so bad, or it might be a silly, small thing that is just the most annoying thing in the world, and you have to do it every day. But it also might be really big things. One partner might be responsible for the other person staying alive. I mean, it could be that dire of a situation, and that's a really heavy thing to carry. And so I think we should look at and talk about, explore some ways to sort of alleviate that, just that heaviness.
And I think one of the ways that we do that is the fancy way of saying that is like respite care, but and all that really means is like, who else is around you that can help, provide some support, so that you can, if you're the caregiver, you can kind of tap out for a little bit, whether that be an hour or, half a day or something, just so that you can refill your own bucket, or get a nap.
Can you get a weekend away with the guys? Can you get a girls' weekend? People need downtime.
Yeah, downtime is a huge thing, but you have to have the support mechanism around you to be able to do that. Especially, as Kristy was saying, when the situation is if that person doesn't get the care, they could potentially die. Then you've got to make sure that the systems and the network is there to support that and be able to do that. Because if you're not sure that the network is there, then even if you're 100 miles away, you're not going to get the rest that you're expecting, because you're so worried about what's going on. So it's making sure that you have the right people around you to provide the respite and provide the support that both of you need.
Yes, respite care for sure. And I would have thought, even 5 years ago, I would have thought that people who had these situations, disability or illness, would know, such and such in my community, in my city, my county, whatever, this is available. These resources are available. This organization helps. But what we found, the more that we have kind of poked around and looked for these sorts of resources, is that people don't always know what's immediately available. Tony and I talk all the time about wishing there was sort of a hub for this kind of information, with kiddos with disabilities or adults. It doesn't matter. Just where is one place where all the information is? And we haven't found it yet. There are groups. There's a beautiful group in our community led by a friend of ours who she tries to sort of assimilate as much as she can and kind of disseminate information in as bulk a way as she can to the families that are involved. And God bless her, the woman is an angel. But even then, she doesn't have all the magic either. And so I think making yourself aware of the resources that are available to you, what your insurance will and will not cover, how things can be coded and get coverage, those nuances are really important. It's very important to know, the resources that are available to you, and maybe start with your doctor, call your insurance company. A lot of insurance companies now offer those sorts of supports to caregivers. There's add-on plans that employers can, and a lot of them do. They're very inexpensive for the employer to add on for those sorts of mental and emotional support programs. So look at what you have. Look at the resources that you have available. Talk to friends, go to the internet and just search the basic things that, whatever your situation is, the disability, the diagnosis, and just see, because you might be surprised by the respite care resources that are available, or at least the support services. Which brings us to another interesting thing, which is that it's not always care of the partner. Maybe it's support with getting your house clean. Maybe another burden can be alleviated so that you can focus on the caregiving. Because, if I were a betting person, I would bet heavily that it's not just the weight of the disability, it's the weight of the disability in addition to all the other life responsibilities. Maybe there's work outside the home and other people in the family that have to be fed, and laundry that has to be cleaned, and floors that still have to be washed, even if you've got this other stuff to take care of. And so if you can't address one set of needs, address another set. If your resources can stand it, just order a pizza. Don't cook dinner when you're feeling, up against the wall. Maybe you can order your groceries. That's something that my family does. We're big users of that kind of thing, just because it saves so much time. And it used to be that it was expensive and we kind of hemmed and hawed about it, but anymore you can order on Amazon, you can order Walmart Plus. There's just so many ways where there's just not a lot of additional cost. So simplify in other areas where you can. And I think we're preaching to the choir here, I'm sure.
And there's so many different ways now. 5 years ago, I would have killed for a service like an Uber or Lyft or something like that provided transportation that was easier than a taxi service, just because when you called for a taxi, you had no idea when that taxi was showing up. You just had to kind of watch from your window and just watch for that yellow car in most cases to show up. But then with the advent of Lyft and Uber, now you can watch from your phone and know exactly when that car is going to pull up, and that's helpful. But and a lot of different organizations, and Kristy mentioned one, but a lot of different organizations are in the process of trying to create that sort of directory or hub, of those services. And I'm part of a think group that is slowly putting together resources online and on a website, so that we can disseminate that information, one, easier, but then also easily be able to add to it as more resources are found. Because so many of these things you find out word of mouth of, hey, I'm looking for this. Oh yeah, so-and-so is doing that, or here, call this number, talk to this person. And so bits and pieces you learn just by word of mouth. And so we're trying to create that sort of searchable resource online so that people, here locally in Melbourne and hopefully beyond, once we show that this is helpful, we'll have a resource, that they can go to search for, those kind of things. So.
And that's huge, because we just over and over, we see that when a family has a disability situation, people, it's all you can do to just get through, right? People aren't always as adept, or don't have the time or the energy to get out and connect, which is, if you can get out and connect, that's fantastic. But if you can't, you're not going to get that word of mouth. So this sort of repository, I think, is a really good step. Communication. Make sure that you stay in touch with your partner. And I mean, that sounds silly when we're talking about a caregiving situation, but really stay in touch. Stay in touch with your mental health. Are you doing okay? Am I doing okay? Talk through that stuff. Certainly your physical health, both people, in addition to whatever else is going on, illness can exacerbate a difficult situation, can create an absolute need for respite care. If the caregiver is the one who gets sick, stay on top of your spiritual health. Pray together, pray apart, pray all the time. I think when life feels heavy, for me anyway, that's the quickest way to get some support, to get some help, is just to pray about it, get it off your chest, tell it to somebody who loves you and wants to be there and wants to help you carry that burden. Just pray about it.
And I'm looking for ways to stay connected. So Kristy talked about communication, and obviously those check-ins are important, but also staying connected on an emotional level, on an intimate level. So that could look like just going on dates, and that doesn't mean like going out and spending $100 or $150 on like a fancy dinner. That could be a movie date, in your bedroom, just with some popcorn and just sharing a movie together, where you're laughing together, it's just that shared space to where you can just kind of shut everything else out and just be with each other, understanding that, those kind of things are still important, that you just connect with each other and making sure, that you do that, and expressing gratitude, expressing, telling, your spouse, hey, you're beautiful. Hey, you're handsome. You're, saying, I love you, as silly as that may sound, but just saying the words, I love you, and, looking at them and saying, I love you, and saying, I'm so proud of you. I'm thankful for you, and I mean, Kristy, earlier today, cooked some dinner, and she might have thought that it was a simple thing, but still, I said, thank you so much, for dinner tonight, and just expressing that gratitude, and just knowing that, again, this is your person, and you're in this together. You're not in this against each other. And so just really making that connection, and making that connection important enough to fight for it.
At the beginning of this, Tony talked about how his disability describes him, but it doesn't define him. It is not his identity. And when disability or illness is the elephant in the room, sometimes I think it's really important to just say out loud, just reassert that you're more to me than this problem. I know this takes up our time. I know that it takes up our resources. I know that it makes me cross as a wet cat, but I see you. You're still my guy. You're still my girl. You're still my true love. It's more than that.
And there's so much. I mean, look for supports. Look for, a group that you can lean on. I was at a men's conference last week, and one of the things that we talked about was finding, somebody that can be a lightning rod. And what we mean by that is just finding someone that can listen to you when you're like emotional and you need to vent, but knowing that person is going to take everything that you say and it's going to stop with them. They're going to ground it to where it doesn't go beyond them. So it's not like they're not going to gossip about it. They're not going to tell others about it. You're just able to vent to them, and this person can't be your spouse. So for me, like it's got to be a guy friend that I trust, that knows me and knows me very well, that I can vent to. And for Kristy, it's got to be a girlfriend of hers that knows her very well, that she can vent to, but also that person, whoever that lightning rod is going to be, that they're not going to egg on whatever's going on. So they're going to listen, and they're going to let you vent, but then they're going to point you back to the person. They're going to point you back and encourage you to say, okay, I get it. I know that you're upset. I know that you're angry, hurting, whatever. But remember, Kristy's your girl. Kristy's your person, and being an encouragement, not one to say, man, Kristy should have done that, and I can't believe she didn't do that. Like, this person, whoever it is, needs to be someone that's going to hear you, but then point you back to a healthy point between you and your spouse.
Whoever it is, whether, you've got to have this lightning rod. You've got to have people that it fills your bucket to be around them. Even if you're an introvert, even if you're the most introverted introvert, recharging your batteries on your own and being isolated are not the same thing. And being isolated is dangerous, whether it's an individual person or even as a couple, you can become isolated, and it's just very, very dangerous. Nothing good happens in isolation. We are meant to be connected. We are meant to be relational, and we are meant to help each other to carry the burdens that we have in life. Friends, family, if you struggle with that, if you don't live near your family, or you don't have a lot of folks in your family, and if you're new to the area, or you just haven't gotten out and made friends, find a connection point. Maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's a support group around the disability or challenge that you have. It doesn't matter, but find somebody, find a way to connect. Chat up the clerk at the grocery store. Find a church. For Tony and me, Life Group has been, over the years, just a really amazing source of people, and we've joined our life groups. We've been just really blessed, really lucky. They've done well, they've thrived, they've branched, and a lot of times we've been in the new, we've gone to the new group, and it's always with a little bit of trepidation and what if they don't like me? What if we're not like them? What if we don't have anything in common? And always we've made connections, we've made friends. I would argue that the couples that are closest to us have almost all come through a life group situation.
And just life group is just our church's way of just saying a small group.
Yeah.
So it's just something to be a part of a community. And honestly, it's another reason why we have created Unshaken, and why we've created, not only this podcast, but just we want to create this community so that again, that you're not alone. So there's so many different ways to get in contact with us. Depending on how you're listening to this podcast, there should be a link right at the top of the description of the episode. Please click on that link, and it'll pop up as a text message, and it'll send it to us, and we'll be praying for you if that's what you need. Like if there's anything that we can do to help, we will do whatever we can. But we want to, just foster that community here, and that's why we do this.
We're all friends here.
And so, we absolutely encourage you to find, a local group that you can go to in person, because, there's a lot of value in that person-to-person interaction. But please do, reach out to us. We would love to be able to just speak into those stories and just share the experience and laugh with you, cry with you, whatever the case may be. But just know that we are friends and we are going to be praying for you. And we're so thankful that you're even listening to this podcast. So thank you guys so much. Hopefully this has helped you guys. If you guys have questions, please send those to us. We would love to talk through some of those questions. And if it's something that we've experienced personally, then we'll speak from our perspective. If it's not, I'm sure that we know people that have gone through those different experiences that we can lean on and bring on as a guest and kind of just talk through those different situations. So please send us those questions, the prayer requests, anything that you guys have. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Kristy, would you just pray us out and again, guys, we just love you, and we're all friends here, and we just are so thankful that you guys are here.
Hey, God, it's us, a group of friends, just coming to you very, very thankful for each other, for the opportunity to carry our burdens together, to share the weight of the things that are heavy in our lives. We thank you for the opportunity to bring these things to you in prayer and to just come to your side and sit at your feet and just ask for the love and the support and the care that we need to get through some really tough situations day to day. We're thankful for each other. We're thankful for the gift of marriage and for the ability to just love and connect and make just a beautiful relationship based on the gifts that you've given each of us individually and as married pairs. We ask for strength and guidance and comfort for everyone who listens to this and is impacted by disability or illness. We pray for the caregivers that they would find strength and just hope and encouragement and just the bravery to go forward when things seem really tough. We pray for the ill and disabled, that their burdens would be eased, that their pain, their struggles would be minimal. And we just know that when anyone has a hard time, we know that your mighty hand is on them. And we just ask that you steer and guide and carry those who just need that little bit of extra support to get through their days. We thank you for who we are because of you. And we ask all of these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.